You can own a company worth billions, but you cannot buy the moment when someone finally understands you. The words would have sounded impossible coming from anyone else. But on that quiet evening inside one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, they became the beginning of a story nobody in the room would forget. Under the golden glow of crystal chandeliers, surrounded by polished marble floors and the soft rhythm of conversations from New York's elite, a billionaire CEO sat staring at a menu he could not explain. Alexander Nakamura had built an empire from nothing but ideas, discipline, and determination. His name was recognized across the world. His company, Nakamura Global Robotics, was valued at more than $20 billion. Investors listened when he spoke. Executives waited for his decisions. Entire industries moved because of his vision. But that night, in a small corner of a luxury Japanese restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, all that power suddenly felt distant. The menu in front of him carried dishes from different regions of Japan, each one carefully prepared with traditional ingredients and cultural meaning. Alex knew exactly what he wanted. He understood the flavors. He understood the history. But when he tried to explain his order in English, something unexpected happened. The words did not come out the way he intended. The server looked confused. Alex repeated himself, slower this time. Still, the message was lost somewhere between language and expectation. Around him, the restaurant continued moving. Glasses touched. Plates arrived. Guests laughed quietly. But for the first time in years, Alexander Nakamura felt invisible. Not because people ignored him, but because nobody could understand him. He was a man who had spent decades creating technology designed to connect people. Yet he was struggling with the simplest human connection of all. A few tables away, Maya Bennett noticed. She was carrying a tray of sparkling water, moving carefully through the crowded dining room. To most guests, she was simply another waitress in a black uniform. Another person working behind the scenes while important people occupied the spotlight. They saw the tray in her hands. They saw the name tag on her chest. They did not see the years of knowledge, patience, and experience behind her calm expression. Maya had learned early that the world often decided who mattered before hearing their story. She knew what it felt like to be overlooked. She knew what it meant to stand quietly in rooms where people noticed your service, but never your potential. But Maya also understood something many people forgot. Every person carried a story that was bigger than their appearance. As she walked past Alex's table, she noticed the small details others missed. The way he carefully pointed at a phrase on the menu. The way he searched for the right words. The way frustration appeared briefly in his eyes before he hid it behind a professional smile. She did not see a billionaire struggling. She saw a person trying to be understood. Maya placed the tray down at a nearby table and paused for a moment. She could have kept walking. It was not her responsibility. It was not part of her job description. But sometimes the smallest decisions reveal the biggest parts of who we are. She stepped forward gently and said, "Excuse me, sir. I think I might be able to help." Alex looked up, surprised. He was used to assistants solving problems, consultants offering solutions, and executives presenting answers. He was not used to a waitress being the person who stepped forward. Maya smiled politely, not with pity, but with respect. Then she looked at the menu and quietly asked him a question in Japanese. The entire table went still. Alex's expression changed instantly. Not because she spoke his language, but because she understood something deeper. In that moment, the woman carrying a tray became the person who could connect two worlds. And nobody in that restaurant knew that a simple act of kindness was about to change the way a billionaire saw power forever. Alexander Nakamura had spent most of his adult life in rooms where every person knew exactly who he was before he introduced himself. His name carried weight. His reputation opened doors before he ever touched the handle. At business conferences, people waited for his arrival. At board meetings, executives studied his expressions carefully, searching for approval or disagreement. He was the kind of man whose schedule was measured in minutes because every hour represented millions of dollars, thousands of employees, and decisions that could change the future of his company. But behind all of that success was a truth few people ever saw. Alexander was comfortable with control. He understood numbers. He understood strategy. He understood machines. What he struggled with was the unpredictable space between people. His world had been built on efficiency. Problems appeared, and he solved them. Questions came, and he answered them. Obstacles stood in front of him, and he moved them aside. Yet that evening inside the Manhattan restaurant, he experienced something money and influence could not immediately fix. He needed another person to understand him. The moment Maya Bennett spoke Japanese, the atmosphere around the table changed. The confusion disappeared. The awkward silence faded. But what surprised Alex most was not her language ability. It was the way she spoke. She did not perform for attention. She did not exaggerate the moment. She simply helped. In a world where people often tried to impress him, Maya was the first person that night who treated him like an ordinary human being. She explained his order to the server, clarified the regional style he wanted, and even added a small recommendation based on the restaurant's traditional menu. Alex listened carefully. He noticed how naturally she moved between cultures. It was not just translation. It was understanding. "You learned Japanese in school?" he asked. Maya smiled slightly as she adjusted the tray in her hand. "Not exactly," she replied. "I learned it because I wanted to understand people better." That answer stayed with him. Most people he met talked about languages as business tools, a way to negotiate, a way to expand markets, a way to gain an advantage. Maya saw language differently. To her, words were bridges. They were invitations. They told people, "I see you. I hear you. You matter." Alex looked around the restaurant. The same people who had been watching his struggle moments earlier were now watching Maya. Some looked surprised. Some looked impressed. But Maya seemed completely unaware of the attention. She simply returned to her work. That was the part Alex could not understand. She had just done something that would have earned praise in his world, yet she acted as if kindness was nothing special. Because to Maya, it was not a performance. It was who she was. Long before she wore a restaurant uniform, Maya Bennett had always been a listener. Growing up in Queens, New York, she had watched her grandmother welcome neighbors from different countries into their small apartment building. Her grandmother spoke only a few languages, but she believed every person deserved to feel included. That lesson stayed with Maya. She studied communication, explored different cultures, and spent years learning how people connected beyond words. Life did not lead her directly into the career she imagined. Bills needed to be paid. Family responsibilities came first. So she worked at the restaurant while continuing to build her future quietly. She never saw the job as a reflection of her limits. She saw it as a place where she could learn about people. Every table had a story. Every customer carried something unseen. That night, one of those stories belonged to Alexander Nakamura. A billionaire who had mastered the language of business was discovering a different kind of intelligence, the kind that could not be measured by stock prices or company value. As Maya walked away to serve another table, Alex watched her for a moment longer. For the first time in years, he wondered how many remarkable people he had passed by simply because he was too focused on looking upward. And somewhere between a quiet restaurant table and a simple act of kindness, a powerful man began learning a lesson he never expected to need. Before that evening, Maya Bennett had always been the person standing just outside the spotlight. She was close enough to witness important moments, close enough to hear powerful conversations, but rarely close enough for anyone to ask about her own story. In the elegant dining room of the Manhattan restaurant, surrounded by executives, investors, and people who measured success by the size of their bank accounts, Maya moved quietly between tables with the same calm confidence she carried every day. To many guests, she was simply part of the background. A person who arrived with a tray, placed a glass, smiled politely, and disappeared before anyone remembered her name. But the truth was far more complicated. Maya had spent years developing a skill that most people never noticed. She paid attention. She noticed the hesitation before someone spoke. She noticed the emotion behind a simple request. She noticed when someone was not asking for help because they were too proud to admit they needed it. That ability came from her childhood. Maya grew up in a neighborhood in Queens where different languages filled the streets. Her apartment building was home to families from around the world. Her grandmother often reminded her that every accent carried a history and every language carried a story. While other children saw differences, Maya saw connections. She became fascinated by the small details that brought people together. The meaning behind a phrase, the importance of a respectful greeting, the difference between simply translating words and truly understanding someone. Years later, those lessons followed her into the restaurant. She never expected them to lead her to a billionaire CEO sitting alone at a table, but life had a way of creating moments nobody planned. After helping Alexander Nakamura with his order, Maya returned to her responsibilities. She checked on customers, carried plates, and continued her shift as if nothing unusual had happened. That surprised Alex more than anything. In his world, people usually wanted something in return. A connection, a favor, a future opportunity. Every interaction had a purpose. But Maya had helped him and walked away. No request, no introduction, no attempt to use the moment for personal gain. Alex found himself watching her from across the room. He noticed things he would have ignored before. The way she remembered small details about customers. The way she greeted elderly guests with patience. The way she quietly solved problems before anyone else noticed them. She was not just serving food. She was creating comfort. And that was something Alex understood better than he expected. His entire company was built around the idea of making technology that improved human experiences. Yet here was someone with no executive title, no corporate office, and no team of engineers creating a better experience with nothing more than awareness and compassion. Later that evening, as Alex finished his meal, he asked the restaurant manager about Maya. The manager smiled. Maya? She is one of our best employees. Always dependable. Always learning. Always helping others. Alex nodded, but he realized the manager's answer still did not explain what interested him most. He wanted to know how someone with so much knowledge ended up carrying plates instead of leading a company. The question stayed in his mind because it reminded him of something uncomfortable. How many talented people had he never noticed because they did not appear in the places where he expected greatness to exist? In business, Alex had learned to recognize value quickly. A promising company, a brilliant engineer, a profitable idea. But people were different. Human potential did not always arrive with a resume, a title, or a recommendation from someone important. Sometimes it appeared quietly, wearing a simple uniform and offering help when nobody else did. As the restaurant lights softened and the evening crowd slowly disappeared, Alexander Nakamura left with more than a successful dinner. He left with a question he could not ignore. What other extraordinary people had the world overlooked simply because nobody stopped long enough to see them? And for the first time in a very long time, the billionaire who had spent his life searching for innovation began looking in a completely different direction, toward the people everyone else failed to notice. The next morning, Alexander Nakamura arrived at his Manhattan office earlier than usual. The city outside his glass windows was already moving at full speed. Cars crossed busy streets. People rushed toward their daily responsibilities. Thousands of lives continued beneath the towering buildings that represented ambition, success, and endless competition. Normally, Alex would have been focused on numbers, quarterly reports, investor meetings, product launches, the endless stream of decisions that came with leading a global company. But that morning, his thoughts kept returning to a simple moment inside a restaurant. A waitress standing beside his table. A calm voice speaking a language he thought only a few people around him could understand. A person who helped him without expecting anything in return. For years, Alex believed the most valuable things in life could be measured. Company growth, market share, revenue, innovation. His entire career was built on identifying potential before others could see it. Yet he realized something uncomfortable. He had become better at recognizing the value of technology than recognizing the value of people. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya Bennett began another ordinary day. Her alarm rang at 6 o'clock in the morning inside her small apartment in Queens. The room was quiet except for the sound of the city waking up outside her window. She prepared coffee, reviewed her notes from an online language course, and checked her schedule before heading to work. There was no expectation that the previous night would change anything. To Maya, helping Alex had simply been the right thing to do. She did not think about the fact that he was a billionaire. She did not think about the cameras around the restaurant or the curious looks from other guests. She saw a person who needed assistance, and she responded. That was always how she lived. But what Maya did not know was that her small action had stayed with someone who was used to unforgettable moments. Later that afternoon, Alex returned to the same restaurant. This time, he was not there for a business dinner. There was no group of executives waiting for him. No presentation. No negotiation. He simply wanted to understand the person who had shown him a different kind of intelligence. The restaurant manager recognized him immediately and welcomed him back. When Alex asked about Maya, the manager looked surprised. Maya, he said. She is working tonight. She has been here for years. Alex nodded and waited. When Maya finally appeared from the kitchen area. She looked genuinely surprised to see him. "Mr. Nakamura, is everything okay?" she asked. He smiled. "Everything is better because you helped me yesterday." Maya politely shook her head. It was just a small thing. But Alex knew it was not small. Small moments often revealed the biggest truths. He asked her about her language skills. Maya explained that she had spent years studying different cultures, not because she wanted to impress people, but because she enjoyed understanding them. She talked about her grandmother, who taught her that every person wanted the same basic thing, to be respected and heard. Alex listened carefully. He noticed that Maya never spoke about herself with pride or frustration. She simply described her journey honestly. She had dreams of working in international communication. She wanted to create programs that helped people from different backgrounds connect. But life had taken a different route. Responsibilities came first. Family needs came first. So she worked where she could while continuing to learn. Alex looked around the restaurant. The same place where he had once felt unable to communicate now felt completely different. Because he understood something important. Maya was not remarkable because she spoke Japanese. She was remarkable because she used what she knew to make another person feel valued. As he prepared to leave, Alex thanked her again. Maya smiled and returned to her work. But this time, Alex did not walk away seeing a waitress. He walked away seeing potential. And that change in perspective would soon become the reason their paths crossed again in a way neither of them expected. 3 days after that evening at the restaurant, Alexander Nakamura found himself sitting in a conference room filled with some of the most experienced executives in the technology industry. The walls were covered with digital screens displaying market projections, development plans, and global expansion strategies. It was the kind of room where decisions worth millions of dollars were made before lunch. Normally, Alex would have been completely focused. He would study every number, question every assumption, and search for the smallest detail that could determine success or failure. But something felt different. For the first time in years, he was not only looking at information. He was looking at people. The meeting was about a new project inside Nakamura Global Robotics. The company had developed advanced translation technology designed to help people communicate across languages. It was one of the most ambitious projects in the company's history. The goal was simple: create technology that could remove barriers between cultures. But as Alex listened to his team present their ideas, one thought kept returning. They had created systems that could translate words, but had they truly understood communication? A machine could convert sentences. A program could recognize patterns. But could technology understand hesitation in someone's voice? Could it recognize when a person needed patience more than accuracy? Could it understand the feeling behind the words? Those questions reminded him of Maya Bennett, a waitress who had never worked in a technology company, a woman without a corporate title. Yet somehow, she had demonstrated the exact thing his team was trying to build: real human connection. Alex made a decision. He wanted Maya involved in the early stages of the project. Not as a symbol, not as a story for publicity. He wanted her perspective because she understood something his engineers had overlooked: the human side of communication. When his executives heard the idea, some were uncertain. They respected Alex's decisions, but they struggled to understand why a restaurant employee should have a place in a technology discussion. One executive carefully asked, "Are you sure she has the background for this level of work?" Alex looked at the presentation screen in front of him and paused. Years earlier, he might have asked the same question. But now he understood the hidden assumption behind it. People often confused experience with potential. They looked for value in familiar places and missed it everywhere else. "I am not asking her to write code," Alex replied. "I am asking her to help us understand the people our technology is supposed to serve." That afternoon, Alex contacted Maya. When she received the message, she assumed it was about the restaurant. She never expected an invitation from one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world. During their conversation, Alex explained the project and asked for her thoughts. Maya listened carefully before answering. "Technology can help people communicate," she said. "But people need to feel respected before they can truly connect." Alex wrote that sentence down. It was simple, but it carried a truth that many experts had forgotten. Over the next few weeks, Maya joined several meetings with Alex's team. At first, she was quiet. She observed the discussions. She listened to engineers describe features and possibilities. She studied how people in the room communicated with each other. Then she started asking questions. Questions that surprised everyone. What happens when someone is afraid to make a mistake? What happens when an accent is treated like a problem instead of a part of someone's identity? What happens when the person using the technology does not feel included? The room often became silent after her questions, not because they were difficult to answer, but because nobody had thought about them before. Alex watched as his team slowly began seeing the project differently. Maya was not adding technical knowledge. She was adding human understanding. And that was the missing piece. A few months earlier, nobody in that building would have imagined a waitress sitting at the same table as executives and engineers. But life has a way of placing the right person in the right moment. Maya never walked into Alex's world looking for recognition. She simply offered kindness when someone needed it. And now, without realizing it, she was helping reshape the future of a company built on connecting people. Maya Bennett never expected a simple conversation in a restaurant to place her inside one of the most advanced technology companies in the world. Every morning when she walked into the offices of Nakamura Global Robotics, she still felt the contrast. The building stood like a symbol of modern success, with glass walls, open spaces, and teams of brilliant minds working on ideas that could change the future. Around her were engineers, researchers, and executives who had spent years building their careers. Maya arrived with the same quiet confidence she had always carried, but she understood that she was entering a world very different from the restaurant where she worked. Some people welcomed her immediately. Others watched carefully, wondering what a waitress could possibly contribute to a billion-dollar technology project. Maya noticed the questions in their expressions, but she did not let them define her. She had spent enough time being underestimated to understand one important truth. People often judge what they can see before they understand what they cannot. Alexander Nakamura noticed it too. He saw the hesitation from some members of his team. He knew that many of them respected intelligence only when it came with familiar signs of achievement. Degrees, titles, awards, corporate experience. But Alex had learned a different lesson. Some of the most valuable insights came from people who experienced problems firsthand. During a project meeting, the team presented a new version of their translation system. The technology was impressive. It could process thousands of words quickly. It could recognize different accents. It could provide instant translations between multiple languages. Everyone in the room was focused on what the machine could do. Then Maya asked a simple question. What happens when the translation is correct, but the person still feels misunderstood? The room became quiet. The engineers looked at the screen. The question was not about software. It was about people. Maya explained that communication was never only about vocabulary. A person could use the correct words and still fail to create understanding. A greeting could sound perfect but feel cold. A translation could be accurate but miss the emotion behind the message. Alex listened carefully. This was exactly what he had been searching for. The missing connection between technology and humanity. Over the following weeks, Maya worked closely with the development team. She shared observations from years of interacting with customers from different backgrounds. She explained how small gestures could make people feel welcomed or ignored. She talked about how language carried culture, memory, and identity. The team began changing the way they approached the project. They started asking different questions. Not only, can the system translate this, but also, will this help people feel understood? One afternoon, Alex found Maya reviewing a design document alone in the conference room. He asked her why she spent so much time studying every detail. Maya smiled and answered, because the people who use this deserve something made for them, not just something made for technology. That sentence stayed with him. Alex had built companies by creating solutions. But Maya reminded him that solutions only mattered when they improved real lives. The same woman who once stood quietly beside a restaurant table was now influencing decisions inside a global company. Not because someone gave her a chance out of sympathy. Not because she needed to prove she belonged. She was there because her perspective had value. And slowly, everyone in the building began to see what Alex had already understood. Maya Bennett was never just the person carrying a tray. She was someone who had spent years learning the most important language of all, the language of people. The world inside Nakamura Global Robotics began to change in ways that nobody expected. At first, Maya Bennett's presence in the company meetings felt unusual. Some employees still struggled to understand why a waitress from a Manhattan restaurant was sitting beside engineers and executives discussing the future of technology. But every week that passed, those doubts became quieter. Not because Maya demanded attention. Not because she tried to prove anyone wrong. She simply continued doing what she had always done. She listened. She observed. She asked questions that others were too focused to consider. And slowly, the people around her realized that her greatest strength was not the languages she knew or the ideas she suggested. It was her ability to see the person behind the problem. Alexander Nakamura watched this transformation carefully. He noticed how meetings changed when Maya entered the room. Conversations became less about features and more about experiences. The team stopped asking only how fast a system could operate and started asking how naturally people could interact with it. For Alex, this was a powerful reminder of something he had forgotten during years of building his empire. Success was never created by technology alone. It was created when technology served humanity. One afternoon, Alex invited Maya to his office overlooking the city. The view stretched across Manhattan, with buildings reaching toward the sky and millions of people moving below. It was the kind of view many dreamed of having. But Alex was not thinking about success that day. He was thinking about perspective. When I started my company, Alex said, I believed the smartest person in the room was the person with the most answers. Maya looked at him quietly. And now, she asked. Alex smiled. Now I think it might be the person willing to ask the right questions. Maya understood what he meant. Throughout her life, she had seen people underestimate others because they focused on appearances, a person's job, their background, their position in society. But human value was never limited to a title. That lesson was becoming clearer throughout the company. Employees who once saw Maya as an outsider now came to her for advice. Developers asked her opinions before finalizing new features. Designers wanted her perspective on how different communities might experience their products. She had become an important voice, not because she had entered their world, but because she helped them understand a world they had never fully seen. Meanwhile, Alex began changing as a leader. He spent more time walking through the offices instead of staying behind closed doors. He asked employees what they needed. He listened before making decisions. Some people noticed the difference immediately. The same CEO known for efficiency and precision was becoming someone who valued connection. The change was not dramatic. It happened through small moments. A conversation, a question, a willingness to hear another perspective. That was the power of Maya's influence. She never tried to change Alex. She simply showed him something he had been too busy to notice. A company could build the most advanced technology in the world, but without empathy, it would always be incomplete. Months later, the translation project prepared for its first major presentation. The room was filled with executives, investors, and industry leaders. Everyone expected Alex Nakamura to introduce the innovation. Instead, he invited Maya to stand beside him. The woman who once stood quietly carrying a tray now stood in front of a room full of powerful people. But she did not see herself as someone who had risen above others. She saw herself as someone who had finally been seen. And beside her, Alex understood a truth that changed the way he viewed leadership forever. The greatest discoveries do not always come from laboratories. Sometimes they come from the people brave enough to remind the world what truly matters. The presentation room was filled with people who had spent their entire careers predicting the future. Investors, technology leaders, and industry experts gathered around a long conference table inside Nakamura Global Robotics headquarters. Screens displayed the results of months of development. Behind every number was a team of engineers. Behind every feature was countless hours of research. Everyone in the room understood the importance of the moment. This was not just another product announcement. It represented a new direction for the company. But when Alexander Nakamura stepped onto the stage, he did something nobody expected. He did not begin with market numbers. He did not talk about profits, growth, or competition. Instead, he looked toward Maya Bennett standing beside him. The future of communication is not only about making technology smarter, Alex said. It is about making people feel understood. Those words reflected the journey he had taken over the past several months. A journey that began with a simple moment in a restaurant and transformed the way he viewed leadership, success, and human connection. Maya stepped forward and explained the vision behind the project. She talked about the moments when people feel separated, not because they lack technology, but because they lack understanding. She shared stories of families speaking different languages, travelers trying to connect in unfamiliar places, and communities where people sometimes feel invisible because their voices are not heard. The audience listened carefully. They were not hearing a technical presentation. They were hearing the reason the technology existed in the first place. Alex watched from the side of the stage. He noticed something important. Maya was not trying to impress anyone. She was not trying to prove that she belonged among executives and investors. She simply spoke from experience. And that honesty created a connection no presentation could manufacture. After the event, the response was immediate. Industry leaders praised the project. Media outlets highlighted the company's new approach. But what mattered most to Alex was not the attention. It was the change inside his own organization. Employees who had once focused only on performance metrics began discussing impact. Teams that rarely worked together started sharing ideas. The company culture slowly shifted from building products for people to building products with people in mind. Maya remained humble throughout the attention. When reporters asked about her role, she always gave credit to the entire team. She never described herself as the person who changed everything. She believed everyone had something valuable to contribute if someone was willing to listen. That belief was exactly what made Alex respect her even more. One evening, after most employees had left the office, Alex walked through the quiet halls of the building. He stopped near the conference room where Maya had asked her first questions about the project. He remembered how unusual it felt to hear a different perspective. He remembered how easily he could have ignored it. In another version of that story, he might have thanked her for helping at the restaurant and moved on with his life. He might have never discovered the insight she carried. He might have continued believing that important ideas only came from people with impressive titles. But life had introduced him to someone who challenged that belief without ever trying to. Maya showed him that talent does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Sometimes it stands in the corner waiting for someone to notice. The project became one of the company's most successful developments, but the greatest achievement was not the technology itself. It was the lesson behind it. A company could create powerful tools, but true progress came from understanding the people who used them. And Alexander Nakamura, a man who once measured success through achievements and numbers, finally understood that the most valuable things in life were often the ones that could never be placed on a balance sheet. Months after the launch of the new communication platform, Alexander Nakamura returned to the same restaurant where everything had started. The city outside continued moving at its usual pace. Cars passed through the streets of Manhattan. People hurried between meetings, appointments, and daily responsibilities. The world was still full of noise, but inside that familiar restaurant, Alex found a moment of quiet reflection. He sat at the same table where he had once struggled to explain a simple order. The same place where a woman carrying a tray had shown him a lesson no business strategy could teach. This time, he was not there for a meeting. He was not there to negotiate a deal. He was there to remember. When Maya Bennett arrived for her shift and saw him sitting there, she smiled with surprise. "You came back," she said. Alex nodded. "I did." There was no need for a long explanation. Some moments in life stay with people because they represent something greater than what happened on the surface. That evening had not simply been about a language barrier. It had been about a person who had every reason to walk past someone struggling, but chose to stop. Maya sat with him for a few minutes before beginning her work. They talked about the changes at Nakamura Global Robotics. They talked about the people who had embraced the new direction. They talked about how a simple idea could grow when the right people believed in it. But more than anything, they talked about perspective. Alex admitted something he had rarely said out loud. For years, he believed leadership meant having the strongest voice in the room. He believed the person with the most knowledge should guide everyone else. But Maya had shown him another kind of leadership, the ability to listen, the courage to admit that someone else might see something you missed, the humility to learn from unexpected places. Maya smiled and told him that she never thought she was teaching him anything. She was simply helping someone the way she hoped others would help her. That answer stayed with Alex, because it revealed the difference between kindness and recognition. True kindness did not happen because someone was watching. It happened because it was the right thing to do. Over time, Maya continued working with communities connected to Nakamura Global Robotics. She helped create programs that made technology easier for people from different backgrounds to use. She traveled to schools, community centers, and organizations where people often felt left behind by rapid changes in technology. She reminded everyone that innovation was not only about creating something new. It was about making sure people were included in that future. Alex continued leading the company, but his definition of success had changed. He still cared about growth. He still cared about excellence. But he understood that the greatest achievements were not only measured by financial results. They were measured by the lives improved along the way. Years later, when people asked Alex about the most important decision he ever made as a CEO, many expected him to mention a major investment or a groundbreaking invention. Instead, he always remembered a quiet evening in a restaurant, a moment when he needed help, a moment when someone others might have overlooked stepped forward. Maya Bennett never entered his life trying to change it. She never asked for recognition. She never expected a reward. She simply offered understanding when it was needed most. And that was the lesson Alexander Nakamura carried with him forever. The most powerful person in the room is not always the one with the most money, the biggest title, or the loudest voice. Sometimes it is the person who chooses kindness when nobody is watching. Sometimes it is the person who reminds the world that every human being has value. Because true connection does not come from power. It comes from humanity.